All right, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are watching from. Thanks for registering to learn more about Heroku and Experience Cloud. We're going to give everyone a couple minutes to sign on and get started, and then we'll get going. So just bear with us for a moment, please. Ryan, while we are letting everyone get situated, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. We'll just give everyone a couple more minutes and get started at 12:03.
Sounds good.
All righty. Let's go ahead and get started then. If anyone has any issues seeing our screen or hearing the presenters, please feel free to chat me. But let's go ahead and get started. So thank you for your time this afternoon. My name is Rebecca Josh, and I am the marketing manager here at LaunchPad Lab. Today, we'll be talking about the trade-offs between Heroku and Experience Cloud. Joining me today is Ryan Francis, CEO and partner at LaunchPad Lab, along with Matt Jackson, who is a Salesforce developer here at LaunchPad Lab. Ryan's experience is primarily within Heroku, and Matt's is within Experience Cloud, so each of them will be speaking to the pros and cons with each technology. We're going to go ahead and get started with a quick overview of LaunchPad Lab for those of you who may not be super familiar with us, and then transition into why you are really here, which is to talk about the considerations when choosing a technology. So without further ado, I'll pass the mic over to Ryan to get us started, and then I will see you all at the end for some Q&A.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan. I'm the CEO here at LaunchPad Lab. And just to give a quick overview of LaunchPad, we've been around since 2012. And what we do is we help companies basically build innovative digital technology. So we work with businesses to help them sort of reimagine their business using digital technology as a foundation for their sort of revised or transformed business. We are big believers in Salesforce and the Salesforce ecosystem. And Salesforce really is an ecosystem. They have so many different products that add a lot of value to companies far beyond just their CRM. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the products that Salesforce has to offer to help companies move beyond CRM and really build innovative digital experiences that are sort of more external facing, more customer facing or partner facing. So today, basically what we'll be doing is kind of talking about these two products, Heroku and Experience Cloud, and explaining sort of the value of them, like why companies are using them, what value they add, and then also talking about the differences and how to pick which technology is right for your project. So before we get into like some of those trade-offs and sort of overview of those products, I want to talk about like why these products exist and why they're valuable to Salesforce customers and businesses in general. So at LaunchPad Lab, we're big advocates of this concept of a dual engine architecture. And this architecture is about connecting your CRM or your internal facing technology with your proprietary application ecosystem, the applications that you're building for customers and partners to engage with your business. And the reason why this architecture is so valuable is, in today's day and age, we're really living in this experience economy, this economy where people are making decisions on who they're going to do business with based on their expectation of the experience they're going to get with the business. So it's not just about like the products that you offer as a business, it's as much about the experience that you're delivering to your customers. And that experience in being a millennial myself, that experience is really geared around, is there a digital way that I can engage with the business and I don't have to call or go in person and those kind of things. And so in today's day and age, having that to deliver a great experience, you need that proprietary application ecosystem. And you need that ecosystem to be connected with your internal teams so that sales and support have a 360-degree view of the customers as they're interacting with those digital experiences. So this dual engine architecture is really about connecting your internal people with your external people and allowing for both to have that 360-degree access. Businesses your people having 360-degree view of the customer, but your customer also having a 360-degree access into your business to do whatever things that they want to do, whether it be buying from you, getting support, or learning and engaging in your content. Sales, last thing I'll add here. So Experience Cloud and Heroku Connect are Experience Cloud and Heroku are the two products that allow you to build those proprietary applications in a way that's highly connected to Salesforce. So that's why we're going to be talking about those two products for building portals, websites, and mobile apps.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. So yeah, here's the big question. Why care about your integration to Salesforce? And what Ryan was touching on earlier, the 360-degree view of your customers is really the main objective here. So you want to really understand your customers, their behavior, their activity, and the 360-degree view really means not having any blind spots there, and not connecting your web and mobile apps, your company's proprietary apps into Salesforce. That's a big blind spot, and you can really be missing critical data there. So you want to be capturing what kind of activity they're doing through your website, what they're buying, how they're interacting with your website, and then feed that data back into Salesforce, so you're not missing any great opportunities and revenue generating opportunities there. And the next point, enabling customers to help themselves, to self-service. So this is great for saving your employees time through case deflection, where your customers can go in, read articles about your products, about your company's services, and they don't have to call, write an email in, take up support time, and can help themselves there. And they can also, do things like managing their subscriptions online, and then bring that data back into Salesforce. And, if they're upgrading memberships, you can, kick off your internal Salesforce automation to upgrade their SLA tiers, if that's applicable. Just really integrating all that data back into Salesforce is really powerful. And the last thing I'll touch on here is incorporating personalization. So to enable your marketing team to really create powerful, personalized messaging to your customers, you really need to understand your customers. And if your marketing team is in Salesforce and they are not getting the full picture of your customer, because some of that data is living on your web apps but not integrated back into Salesforce, you're going to miss out on some opportunities there. So to be able to really write personalized and powerful messages, emails, any sort of content for your customers, you'll want to have that integration, and that's going to allow you to retain your customers and increase the engagement with your customers.
All right, sounds good. So I want to give a quick overview of like Heroku and Experience Cloud and just what these products are. So starting with Heroku, Heroku is what they call a cloud platform as a service. So a platform as a service actually sits on top of infrastructure as a service. So if you've heard of AWS, AWS is considered an infrastructure as a service, and Heroku actually runs on top of AWS as a value add layer on top of it called platform as a service. But basically, if I had to boil this down for non-technical folks out there, in a nutshell, Heroku makes it really easy to build and deploy totally custom applications. So it is a code-based environment. So environment where you can host custom code. Salesforce Experience Cloud, on the other hand, is more of a low-code environment where it's geared around there's some point and click development you can do. You can get in and do code development as well, but it's definitely more of a low code environment that's really geared around being able to get things up and running quickly, being able to empower administrators to do more in the build process and not be as dependent on developers. And Experience Cloud comes with a variety of templates, such as like knowledge hubs, self-service help centers, partner portals, as well as some default like components like navigation elements, and lots of different like sort of off the shelf components to sort of get you going faster. So, on the left-hand side, you have a code-based code development environment. On the right-hand side, you have more of a low code environment that is designed to get you going quicker. With those kind of overviews out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into some of the factors that would influence, whether or not you should select Heroku or Experience Cloud for a particular project. So just some of the trade-offs between these two technologies. All right, so the first factor is speed to market. Speed to market is something that both of these technologies can help your organization with. So for example, let's say there's some urgency and you really want to build a portal for your customers and you need to do it very quickly. Both Heroku and Experience Cloud could be really great options for that. Heroku is going to be faster than if you were to say build on something like AWS. Since Heroku runs on AWS and sort of automates all of the DevOps related to the environment and infrastructure, it's going to be faster than just using AWS. You'll be able to basically cut off like maybe the first month of development that might maybe otherwise would go into setting up infrastructure and networking rules and security and those kind of things. So at a baseline level, both of these products are definitely great for speed to market. Experience Cloud is going to take that a step further though. Since Experience Cloud does have default templates and components, you can potentially get a product off the ground in as little as 2 weeks if your use case really lines up with one of the use cases that Experience Cloud is designed for, for example, like a help center. So on the flip side, if your use case is something that doesn't line up with Experience Cloud, and if it does happen to be, a very complex use case, like you're trying to, for example, like digitize your entire business or service and create like a platform for customers to engage with your business, it may be that Heroku is actually faster to do the development. So as complexity sort of goes up, and you find yourself going a different direction than the default off-the-shelf components that Experience Cloud offers, it's likely that it may have been faster to just go ahead and use Heroku from the beginning, since that environment is designed for totally bespoke custom development.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, the next consideration here, user experience, features, and branding. So user experience is definitely one of the most important decisions you need to think about when building your app. And there are some pretty big differences between Heroku and Experience Cloud. So as Ryan was saying, Heroku manages that infrastructure layer for you. But then when it comes to your development, you're kind of working with a blank canvas, which means a little more upfront work, but it also gives you that complete control of the UI, enabling you to control every element on the entire screen, and allowing you to create that pixel perfect UI. Whereas Salesforce Experience Cloud, you are developing in a kind of a container where you maybe don't have control over every single pixel on the screen, but you do have quite a bit of control. And the benefit with Experience Cloud is those templatizations where you have a customer portal, a partner portal, or a help center, and many more different templates to kind of kickstart your development. And so they offer a lot of beautiful templates, and you can kind of pick and choose what you want out of those templates, what you want to be, out of the box, what you want to customize. So it offers a great way to kind of kickstart your UI there, so you're not building everything from scratch. But with Heroku, going back to Heroku, it's not necessarily everything's from scratch. You can still tap into the world of open source libraries. So if there's a really awesome CSS library you want to use, or React components, there's still a lot of ways to kind of build your UI faster. But with Experience Cloud, you have those templates, and you can maybe get to 80 or 90% of the complete control of the UI you want. But if having complete control of your UX is going to be really important to your app, then that's where it starts to lean towards Heroku as the better option. And one last thing that I wanted to know is just that, a lot of these really beautiful, complex UIs are possible with Salesforce, but as the complexity increases, some of the limitations with Experience Cloud might make it end up actually taking longer to develop than on Heroku. So a few decisions to make there, and some considerations with the UX. But I will pass it over to Ryan now to talk about mobile considerations.
All right, sounds good. So on the mobile front, this is going to kind of follow a similar theme where Heroku is going to give you the most flexibility. Actually, Heroku itself is not providing any type of mobile UI. Heroku is just going to serve as that backend to your mobile app. So picture your mobile app needing to make requests out to some backend to fetch, make sure log a user in, fetch their user information. That backend would be hosted on Heroku when you're using the Heroku infrastructure. So you have the flexibility to use any mobile UI technology that you want. So for example, Ionic, which is a technology that we love at LaunchPad Lab. It's a cross-platform technology, so you can write your front end in React and have that compile down into iOS, Android, and web. So you can have essentially one developer build on 3 different devices if you wanted to. So you really have flexibility to build that front end however you want, which allows you to get into more into the native controls if you need to. So if you need to get into specific hardware functions, if you need to write native code, you can do that. But it is more of a blank canvas, similar to like the last slide that we just talked about, in that there's going to be some more upfront work to get this environment set up and basically to get your UI going. On the flip side, with Experience Cloud offers a product called a mobile publisher, and mobile publisher will essentially take your Experience Cloud and turn it into a native app. And so it essentially containerizes that Experience Cloud web experience and pushes it out into iOS and Android. This is a situation where you have sort of limited access to jump in and do highly custom things there, like getting into the hardware or doing more advanced functionality. So that's kind of the trade-off, is looking at what you're trying to build into that mobile application. And if there's any features there that you're trying to build, that's just not really compatible with Experience Cloud. That's what you would need to look at.
Awesome. One of the other big differences between Heroku and Experience Cloud that is important to consider is the integration into Salesforce. Both do offer integrations into Salesforce, but the way they approach it is quite different. So Heroku, the way to think about it is when you start up your Heroku app, you have your own, Heroku has its own database. And just, once you start that up, there's really no connection to Salesforce, but Heroku does offer this awesome product called Heroku Connect that does enable a bidirectional sync with Salesforce. So writing from Heroku to Salesforce and then writing from Salesforce to Heroku can be really easy with Heroku, even though you are having a sync between two different databases. And that's quite a bit different than with Experience Cloud, where you're really building on top of your CRM database. So there's really only one database to manage and only one database to write to. That's not saying you couldn't write to other databases through web services and different methods like that. But with Experience Cloud, you're on top of CRM. You can query Salesforce data directly without any sort of web services. You can write to Salesforce directly without any sort of database sync. So it is a bit easier to set up with Experience Cloud, because that's kind of enabled out of the box. And another benefit you get with Experience Cloud is that your CRM validation rules and your internal configs, such as permissions and page layouts, are enforced out of the box. And with Heroku, since there's just that bidirectional database sync, you have to rewrite some of those validation rules and permissions if you want that to mirror your Salesforce internal setup. So if you love working in Salesforce CRM internally and you want those configuration options just enabled as soon as you stand up your Experience Cloud site, then that can be really powerful and save a lot of time. But yeah, with Heroku and the two databases, the benefit there is that with that Heroku Postgres database, you can store a lot of data that might be too granular to store in Salesforce CRM, such as user session data and things that you wouldn't want to really associate with your user object in Experience Cloud and clutter things up. So pros and cons for both, as is with most cases here, but definitely an important topic to consider.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know another important factor here is cost structure, and Heroku and Experience Cloud are priced very differently. So Heroku is costed based on compute. So the cost is driven by, when I say compute, picture like number of and sort of amount of computers that are running, if you will. So that's kind of a simplistic way to put it, but like, the more popular the application, generally speaking, the more servers and server compute that you need to run that. But in general, like if you go from, let's say you had 1,000 users on your application and that grew to 2,000 users, it's pretty likely that you're not going to have to increase compute to handle that type of increase in scale. So your cost tends to kind of stepping stone up or step up, I should say, where you can kind of, a lot of times you can stay pretty flat on cost if you don't expect your application to scale, in the millions and so on. On the flip side, with Experience Cloud is its cost is driven by like the number of users or logins. So if you have like 100 users on day one, and then you scale that to 1,000 users, your cost will go up directly proportionally with the number of new users. So this cost structure is actually really helpful if you have a product that you're trying to, like a portal you're trying to build for sort of a smaller audience. Like let's say you only have maybe 50 users or even 1,000 users log in or something like that. It's probably going to be more affordable to leverage Experience Cloud from a cost structure standpoint because of the fact that the number of users is low enough that total cost would be lower. On the other hand, like with Heroku, if you did have 10,000, 100,000 or 1 million users or something like that, it's likely Heroku might become more cost effective in that situation, since the compute is not going to be scaling up as rapidly as like the number of users. So there's a lot more that goes into like the pricing within Heroku and stuff, but that's kind of the high level on how the cost structures work.
Perfect. That sounds great. IP ownership. So this is an important topic for thinking about the the long-term longevity of your application. So when you talk about IP ownership with Heroku, it's really going to be compatible with a lot of different cloud infrastructure, not just the Salesforce platform. And another benefit there is it's actually language agnostic. So at LaunchPad, we love Ruby on Rails, and we write a lot of our apps with Ruby on Rails. But if you wanted to write a Java app or any of your favorite languages, Heroku would support that. And the big difference between Heroku and Experience Cloud in that front is that Experience Cloud is not language agnostic. So it has to be written in, the Apex backend language that Salesforce owns, the Lightning Web Components or Aura for front end. It is possible to import, your custom applications that are written in a different language into Experience Cloud, but ideally you'd want to be writing in those Salesforce languages. And another big consideration here is that your Experience Cloud site, if there's ever a reason where you'd want to move it off of Experience Cloud, it would entail a pretty big refactor, as with a Heroku app. Whatever other cloud infrastructure you'd want to move your code to, you could easily move it there, just because of how language agnostic Heroku is. And the ability to pull in open source libraries using React or whatever you would like to use in your application. Heroku is going to be better for that kind of flexibility in your languages and your open source libraries. So those are the two biggest differences between IP ownership when we're talking about Heroku and Experience Cloud.
Scalability is definitely another important factor. So scalability, when you think about scalability, this is really about how does your application perform well as the popularity of that application increases. So as the usage goes up, how do we make sure that the application shines under that stress? So there's some differences between how Heroku and Experience Cloud handles the scalability. So first, let me list out a couple of the things within scalability that you need to think about. The first is the user experience. So as your application grows in popularity, it becomes more and more important for the user experience to be buttoned up. If users are experiencing friction as they go through, picture you have like some buying process that users are going through to buy a product from you or to book a appointment or whatever the situation might be. If the user is experiencing a lot of friction in that experience as they're going through, it's likely they're going to have to pick up the phone at some point and reach out to you for help. And we've seen this. We have a client, Omaha Zoo. We're doing a webinar with them next month. Where that was exactly the problem they were having. Their checkout experience was too confusing to the point where they were getting a ton of support requests for people needing help getting through the process of actually buying a ticket or renewing their membership or whatever the feature was. So as you have more and more users, you want to have a really streamlined experience so that you have as little friction as possible as people go through that process to reduce the support and frankly, to just improve the experience of all of those people. The more popular the application, the more valuable it is for that conversion rate to be high. You're going to see more return to the company. So in general, Heroku is going to provide the most control over the UX, so you can deliver a very buttoned up UI UX experience as people go through that, and something that's just like pixel perfect to maximize your conversion rate through whatever experience. So that's kind of one part of scalability is the experience itself and making sure that's really buttoned up. The second part of it is just the actual infrastructure side of scalability of, can this product handle the volume or is it going to crash? We've definitely seen many of our clients who come to us before they're leveraging Salesforce and are on other types of systems, on-premise systems or whatever. We've seen those systems crash under serious increases in popularity. Both Heroku and Salesforce Experience Cloud shine in this regard. Experience Cloud, I'd put a little ahead of this in just the fact that it's a SaaS product. So you, as a business, you just don't even really have to worry about like anything as it relates to the load balancing and stuff like that. You do need to think about, as you write the code, you need to make sure the code is written in a scalable way. But that's the same on both Heroku and Experience Cloud. With Heroku, it's going to make this as easy as possible for developers to manage the scalability, but you still need a competent developer making sure that the system is set up correctly, and basically making sure you've got the right compute and scalability of that compute set up for your application. So that's where like our team would come in and help our clients make sure they have Heroku set up correctly. But this is way easier to do in Heroku than on an infrastructure as a service like an AWS, where you really have to get much more detailed and granular with the setup. So those are some of the big factors, but I find it helpful to actually, when we talk to clients and help them think through, which technology to use, there's a few questions we tend to ask to help us determine which one is the right solution. So the first question is, will your application need to scale? Basically, what is the growth that you anticipate with this application? And is it a mission critical application? And what we're really trying to get at here is like, how important is this application and how much is it going to grow over time? If the answers to these questions are yes, we would sort of lean towards Heroku as an initial reaction. It doesn't mean you can't have a mission critical application on Experience Cloud. You absolutely can. It's just that as we think about the scale of deciding between these technologies, we tend to lean towards Heroku when an application does need to scale and when it needs to be mission critical, since you do generally want a tighter degree of control over that. And you want to basically make sure that the more important the experience I found, the more complex it tends to be. And so being in a code-based environment tends to be helpful in that situation. So that's just, like I said, a rule of thumb. It's not that you can't build a scalable mission critical application on Experience Cloud. You absolutely can. Along those lines, I mentioned the more important the application, a lot of times the more complex it is. That's not always the case, but complexity is definitely one of those things you need to think about. So are there complex features, forms, or experiences? Generally speaking, the more complex the thing you're trying to build, the more likely you want to be in a code environment like Heroku, where you can control the UI, UX and handle that complexity a little bit better. So in general, we would tend to lean towards Heroku for more complex products.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Another question to consider: how much control do your admins need over the solution? So in my opinion, this is where Experience Cloud is really going to shine. So how Experience Cloud is set up, it has a drag and drop builder and kind of a admin view where administrators and non-technical users can go in and modify the site as needed. So if there's copy changes that you need to make, branding changes, page layout changes, even changing the theme can be done without a code deployment when you're working with Experience Cloud. And on the flip side, Heroku, any of those changes to your site would need to be managed by a developer or an internal team of engineers who can make those changes and do the deployments to production. So that's one area where, if you have a smaller team, that Experience Cloud is really going to be great for managing and maintaining those ongoing changes that you'll need to make with your solution.
Will your application generate revenue for your organization? So if the application is generating revenue, then there's a couple reasons why we tend to recommend Heroku for it. So the first is that if your application is generating revenue, it's likely that there's some type of a conversion experience in there, like a conversion funnel where you're trying to get the customer to buy, you're trying to get them to upgrade or enhance their membership. and in either case, your conversion rate is going to be tied to the quality and sort of the pixel perfectness, if you will, of the UI. So the better the experience there, the more likely that they will buy. So having a code environment where you can take tight control over the UI and UX and sort of make sure to handhold that customer through the buying journey will have a direct impact on your conversion rate. So the second piece of that is the complexity. So in general, if the application is generating revenue, it's likely to be more complex because you're dealing with orders and money. And so being in an environment where you can handle complexity in the code and being able to get into code that in an environment that's designed for complexity like that, it tends to be better. So this is just a good rule of thumb. If it's generating revenue, it's likely we would look at Heroku for it.
Awesome. Completely agree. How quickly do you need to go to market? So this is obviously a very big decision when picking your platform, but if you need to bring your application to market in less than 8 weeks, Experience Cloud can be the perfect platform with the wins you get out of the box with UX and scalability. So when you're using Experience Cloud and you have a template that you can use, that really makes things so much easier, where you don't have to manage all the UI, not manage, but develop all the UI elements from scratch. You can pick and choose what you want. Experience Cloud comes with a profile menu where users can update their settings, a navigation bar, a search bar, all those things that you don't have to develop at all. Definitely cuts down on your development time. So Experience Cloud can really get you to market quickly if you have one of those use cases like a customer portal, a help center, partner portals that we talked about. If you can use one of those templates and make it work for your application, you can really get to market quickly. But that being said, LaunchPad does have an accelerator that we've developed that can really boost the speed of getting to market with a Heroku application as well. So I'll let Ryan cover our accelerator.
That sounds good. Thank you. So at LaunchPad Lab, we are big fans of both Experience Cloud and Heroku, but we have found that since Heroku is a little bit more of a blank canvas, it can be helpful to have some defaults to help our clients basically build their products faster. So when we work with our clients, we have a default sort of way of building. We have a default backend technology and a default front-end technology and sort of default integrations between the two. So it basically allows us to start focusing in on developing the actual front end, the UI that customers are engaging with, rather than messing around with plumbing work on the project. So how the accelerator works is, if you think about custom application development, there's really 4 tiers that you have to address to build a application. The first is the infrastructure tier. I should say the bottom here is the infrastructure tier, and this is handled by Heroku. So that's everything from your servers to your networking rules, to the load balancing and sort of scalability of the application. The next is your data tier, and this is going to be the database and any syncing that needs to happen between that database and something like Salesforce, like we talked about today. Heroku also handles that data tier. What Heroku doesn't address and leaves it to the developer to address is the API layer and the UX tier. So the API is going to be the backend where you put a lot of the logic around making sure you're getting the right data for whoever's logged in and handing that data to the front end. And the front end is really responsible for displaying it in a beautiful experience and allowing customers to fill out forms and operate the application. So LaunchPad's accelerator is basically some defaults and some opinionated defaults on what the API should look like, and some defaults around UX and what that should look like, not from a feature standpoint, but more from a plumbing standpoint, so that we can just start writing in and start building that front end experience.
Awesome. Yeah, let's dig into a couple client examples of some real world projects we worked on with both Experience Cloud and Heroku. So our first one here is for the Millennium Trust Company, building a financial portal for payroll admins on Experience Cloud. So the challenge was that they needed a portal for their retirement services platform. So think 401k, and for administrators to log in and really complete a lot of these actions that they would have had to do through email in the past, such as sending in CSV data for their employees and being able to manage the funding of their employee contributions. So we decided Experience Cloud would be a great fit for this. And one of the reasons was for a lot of those out of the box wins we talked about on the UX layer, like the profile menu and navigation bar. We used all of that in the Experience Cloud site, and a lot of the core features we needed, such as bulk uploading CSV data for employees and then getting that information into Salesforce, was something we could do in Experience Cloud, and it wasn't something overly complex that had to go to Heroku. So we were able to leverage Experience Cloud for this kind of self-service payroll admin portal, and it was able to really automate a lot of those time-consuming tasks, and we were able to get a great portal out there that the users love using it, and MTC is happy about. And one consideration was that since this is more of an internal admin portal, we all decided that having complete control over the UI wasn't a top priority. We wanted to get this out quick, and also have that direct integration with Salesforce, since they have most of their core data living in Salesforce. So it's definitely a project where Experience Cloud was really used to its fullest potential to achieve a great outcome.
And here's a Heroku example. Our client Apex Leaders, I'll give you a little background on the client. So Apex Leaders is a search firm. They help private equity firms connect with experts in particular domains. So for example, let's say a private equity firm was looking to purchase like a dentist office or something like that. Apex Leaders could connect that private equity firm with an expert in the dentist space, and sort of bridge that introduction. So Apex Leaders came to us wanting to build a portal where their clients could come in and create projects with them. So essentially say, hey, we're looking, to get connected in with a dentist. And Apex Leaders would then coordinate behind the scenes, get some advisors into the portal, allow those advisors to integrate their calendar, and then that way and then present those advisors back to the client, so the client could essentially schedule that call with whichever advisor they wanted to use. They tried to build this portal actually twice on Experience Cloud. And both times they had to scrap the project. And the reason was not any fault of Experience Cloud. It was a fault of the development team who picked Experience Cloud, because of the fact that the use case was not really a use case that you would use Experience Cloud for what they were trying to do. If the developer had gone through some of the questions that we asked today, one of the questions was like the complexity. Are there any complex features or experiences? And in the case of Apex Leaders, they were trying to make a pretty complex scheduling system. And that complexity really caused those first two projects to fail. With Heroku, we were able to build this really nice scheduling system where advisors could authenticate their calendar, and then clients could basically see that availability for the advisors and book a time. We actually leveraged an API to do a lot of that behavior. And there's some really fancy kind of front end work that went into giving advisors the ability to like select their availability by day and sort of by time block. So in general, this was a situation where making the wrong decision from a technology architecture standpoint can definitely have catastrophic impacts to the outcomes of the projects you're trying to achieve. And it can go both ways. Like if you pick Heroku for something that could have been easily done in Experience Cloud, you're going to incur a lot of unnecessary costs. And then on the flip side, if you pick Experience Cloud for something that really needed to be done in Heroku, you may run into a situation where costs are ballooning or you have to can the project overall. So in terms of outcome for Apex leaders, 95% of their clients leverage the portal now to basically engage with their advisors. So prior to us building this application, all of the clients would basically have to call Apex leaders and connect via email. So this application really facilitated a more automatic, self-service, digital forward approach for Apex leaders to kind of move their business into the 21st century here.
All right, well, that kind of wraps up our content for today. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Ryan, for all of that information about Heroku and Experience Cloud. There's definitely a lot of trade-offs and considerations between the two technologies. So if anyone here in our audience finds themselves in the situation where they need to choose one, please don't hesitate to reach out to us for help. I'll link Matt and Ryan's contact information on the next slide if you don't have it already. But leveraging an expert like Matt or Ryan can really help you make the right decisions for your app or your portal project. So with the time that we have left, I'd like to turn it over to the audience for some questions. It looks like we have had a few come in through the Q&A. Matt and Ryan, why don't we take a quick look and see if we can start going through these?
Yeah, I think this first question is a really good one. So the question is there any difference in managing security and permissions of users and the visibility of objects? So basically this is about like when you think about Experience Cloud versus Heroku, what are the differences in like security and permissioning? I know Matt touched on this a little bit on that integration slide, but I'll kind of expand on what he said. So with Experience Cloud, you have access into all the permissions and sort of Salesforce data that you need to make sure that you're only showing the right data to people at the right time. With Heroku, basically you need to write your own permissions in Heroku, right? So how that would work and your application developer would basically need to make sure that when a user logs in, they're only querying for the data related to that user. Our team has a ton of experience with this, and every project we do, that is a really important part of it. So we call that functionality like authorization, making sure a user is seeing only the data they're authorized to see. And there's lots of good patterns that you can leverage in Heroku to make sure to bring that forward in Heroku. But there is, if you already have permissions outlined in Salesforce, and you want to leverage those permissions to make sure people have access to the right stuff at the right time, it's probably going to be a lot quicker to just use Experience Cloud than to lean into those permissions that are already established. If on the other hand, those permissions don't really exist for your users anyway in Salesforce, then you're going to have to build those anyway, and it probably won't be too much of a difference on either platform.
Awesome, great answer, Ryan. Let's take a look at the next one. It looks like we have another question of, do you have any case studies of Heroku developed community portals?
Yes, quite a few. We just talked about the Apex Leaders one. So that's an example. We actually last week just launched a community application that is for the CPS, so Chicago Public Schools, the teachers to be able to collaborate in a community forum, so they can all basically collaborate in a forum and basically exchange ideas, and for teachers to be able to collaborate more closely across schools is kind of the intention behind it. We're working with a nonprofit called Ingenuity, and so we built that product with them, and that was a community application that we built on Heroku.
Great example, Ryan. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but as a follow-up to this webinar, I'll also send out some use cases and link in our appropriate case studies that we have that relate to each of those as well.
Sounds good.
So the next question, it looks like someone is looking for more information on the cost/ROI on Heroku versus Experience Cloud, and if we could share more details on that.
Yeah, so good question. So unfortunately, the simple answer is it really depends, right? It depends on, how many users, depends on just what the project is. So that's why we do go through more of a quoting process to basically understand what are we trying to build. And what we're going to look at as we try to figure out costs is a few things. What is the technology cost? So how much is it going to cost for Heroku? How much would it cost for Experience Cloud? And then also on the services side, how much time is it going to take and energy is it going to take to stand up the solution on these technologies? So what we provide, LaunchPad provides a service where if you reach out to us, we'd be happy to take a look at your situation, look at both Experience Cloud and Heroku and advise on which technology we think makes the most sense, and also provide guidance on the cost differences between these technologies based on your situation, and then also the implementation costs around actually developing the experience that you're trying to develop on these systems. So, and a long story short, there's not a one size fits all. Here's the cost breakdown. We have to look at each situation to understand what the cost is.
That makes sense. So our next question that just came in, do customers need to have IT to maintain Heroku versus not having to maintain Experience Cloud with more than just an admin?
I can take that one, Ryan, if you're
Sure.
if you want.
Go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good question. So you would have to have IT to maintain Heroku, and I would say it would be good to at least have a developer on staff for your Experience Cloud site. But there is definitely way more flexibility in maintaining an Experience Cloud site and making changes. But some of that does come down to how your Experience Cloud site was developed to begin with. So, if you're kind of rushing through things, you can kind of hard code a lot of values like text and colors and all sorts of things into your custom components, which really leaves your administrator with not a lot of options to customize that going forward. But what LaunchPad likes to do is utilize these things called design attributes in Community Cloud, Experience Cloud, the new name. And so there you can expose a lot of attributes in your custom components like text, colors, those things I mentioned, even like filters. You can make that so an admin can change those things after go live. So, some of it has to do with the work you do upfront and actually developing the Experience Cloud site. But if you do it right, your admin has a lot of flexibility there. But some of the more complex things, like if you want to change the functionality of how one of your forms work or one of your custom forms work, then you would still need a developer most likely to adjust some of that stuff. So IT, I think, is important in both platforms, but the admin is definitely a lot more empowered in Experience Cloud than in Heroku.
And I just to jump in on that and add a little bit of color on the Heroku side as well. So as you compare like Heroku to other infrastructure products like AWS, Heroku is going to have a lot less maintenance than those other infrastructure as a service offerings. So, for example, if you were to leverage AWS, you would definitely need to have a DevOps person on staff to manage that. And a lot of times that's a full-time role to manage, full-time DevOps person on your team to make sure the environments are healthy and to basically monitor that. With Heroku, it's a little bit more set it and forget it. Heroku actually handles all the maintenance and ongoing maintenance of the servers and upgrading the underlying databases and all of that kind of stuff. From a maintenance standpoint, what you need to do with Heroku is have more of an app developer who's keeping an eye, maybe updating the code over time and fixing bugs as they come up with, let's say you want to make a change or there's a bug with the portal experience, you would want to have a developer go in and make those fixes. So the maintenance on the Heroku side tends to be more in the form of like actually changing the application code as opposed to maintaining some type of like a server or IT infrastructure. And that's a little bit different than other like infrastructure as a service products like AWS, where you do need a developer maintaining the infrastructure itself.
Awesome. Thanks for that additional information, Ryan. It looks like we also have a question about Heroku Connect. Ryan, is Heroku Connect available as a standalone product, and have we ever used it like that?
Yeah, and could you maybe flip to the contact page? It looks like some people are trying to at least get probably Boogie out and want to get our contact info, so that makes sense. Could you repeat the question one more time, Rebecca? Sorry.
So it looks like our question was, have we ever used Heroku Connect as a standalone product?
Gotcha. Yeah. So not that I can recall, I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I do know of situations where businesses would potentially do that. Let's say you wanted to get a bunch of data out of Salesforce and into a transactional type of a database or a data warehouse. Heroku Connect can be an option for that, because you can essentially sync the data out into Postgres and then run, whatever kind of analytics, or combine that with some other databases. So I do know that there are some data agility sort of approaches that you can do leveraging Heroku Connect to kind of get your data out of Salesforce and into an environment that is more traditional SQL. But we've never, not that I can recall, I don't think we've done something like that, but I'd have to check with my technical team.
Awesome. We can definitely follow up with the registrants on that as well.
Yeah.
So the next question that we have, how do solution engineers evaluate if the volume of consumption on the site will meet? How will the volume of consumption on the site, if it is appropriate for Experience Cloud or Heroku?
Yeah, so in terms of the volume of consumption, I think this means like amount of traffic or users, and how do you determine which one's more appropriate in terms of Experience Cloud and Heroku, and maybe where is the line? I'd say, like, in terms of strictly volume, it's going to be more of a cost differential, and that's where, frankly, going through a process with LaunchPad and Salesforce, where we can take a look at, what is the estimated user counts, and Salesforce can really quote this out for you. But, based on the estimated user counts, what would be the cost on the Experience Cloud side of things? And then for Heroku, what we'd be looking at is, okay, what are these people doing in the application, and how much compute do we estimate that will require? So we'll take a look at, okay, we think it's going to be maybe 20 dynos, and the word dyno is foreign to most people, but it basically, think about it as server. So based on the number of dynos and the amount of data involved, that's how we kind of figure out what the cost might be. So it really is something that we would have to just take a look at the situation and see how people are using the software to figure out how much compute you need, and then be able to figure out the estimated cost. So I know that's kind of a workaround answer, but unfortunately, it kind of just depends, I guess.
The one thing I wanted to add just about Experience Cloud licensing is, we talked a lot about user paying per user, but with the login type licenses, that does give you brought into your use case a little bit more, where you're not paying per user, but you're paying per login. So if there's a highly seasonal business where you get a lot of logins in 1 month, and then it kind of dies down for the rest of the season, that's a good way to not be paying for those users every month, and just have that one, or however many high spikes of traffic you have there. So there's a couple different use cases for Experience Cloud, not just for the kind of lower user volume.
Awesome. Thanks for that extra detail, Matt. With the remaining minute that we have one more question for both of you. Ryan, would you be able to give a quick overview of some use cases that are best suited for Heroku? And then Matt, could you also do the same on the Experience Cloud side?
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of use cases for Heroku, there's quite a few. One would be if you're trying to essentially take your business. Let's say you have a service that you're trying to digitize. You're trying to, sort of productize your business or service in a digital product. That's a really good use case for Heroku. There tends to be a lot of complexity there. Like you're taking something that maybe has been done traditionally offline and turning it into an online process. But it also is a situation where you probably want to have tight control over the experience for your customer, since it is such a valuable experience for the business. Another use case would be any type of sort of conversion funnel. Like if you're building a application wizard experience, or sort of a checkout experience. I mentioned Omaha Zoo. Like we built a really nice system where customers can come in, they can buy tickets to the zoo, they can buy memberships, they can add add-ons to their visit to the zoo and things like that. And in those situations, in the case of Omaha Zoo, we increased their online revenue from being basically a very small fraction of their business to the majority of all of the business they do is online now. So it can really have, immense value to the firm. So those would be two of many use cases I would call out.
Yeah, and in terms of Experience Cloud, we briefly mentioned quite a few different use cases for self-service, public knowledge bases, kind of customer portals. But one thing I wanted to bring attention to was the partner portal, where you have a company where you have your network of partners who are selling your products. This is where Experience Cloud can be really powerful by utilizing those permissions that you have set up in Salesforce, where you need to share accounts and leads with your partners and help them sell your products, but you don't want to show every opportunity or every lead to your partners. This can be a little bit more complex to set up all those sharing rules via code in Heroku, but with Experience Cloud, if your use case is really tightly coupled with your CRM data, then that can be a great use case for Experience Cloud.
Great example, Matt. All right, well, that's all the time that we have today. We really appreciate everyone taking the time to tune in with us. And as a follow-up, I'll be sending a link to the recording of this webinar along with a PDF and more information on use cases for each specific technology. So in the meantime, if you have any other questions, Ryan and Matt's contact information is here. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and you will hear from us soon. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Yep. See ya.
Bye.